Hello and welcome to Pest in Class, expert voices in pest management. Today we spoke with Suzy Rayner, owner of Valkyrie Pest Solutions in Manitoba, Canada. We discussed her philosophy on hiring, her process when working in low income housing, and the importance of mentorship. I'm your host, Amanda Salvatore. Let's get into it. Suzy Rayner, you are the owner of Valkyrie Pest Solutions in Manitoba, Canada, and you have an incredible story that I'm really excited to get into. How are you today?
I am wonderful. You?
You know what? I'm doing great. I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you on. And first and foremost, here on Pesting Class, we like to do a little icebreaker so we can get to know you even more. This one, not to toot my own horn, but I came up with this on my own. So now I'm not only am I interviewing, but I'm writing as well. Here we go. So when this podcast comes out, it's going to be around school time. So I figured that would be an appropriate topic. So, what was your favorite part of getting back into the classroom as a kid?
And I'm going to throw a total wrench in your
Nice.
thing because
Great.
I didn't go to elementary school or middle school. I was homeschooled until high
Gosh.
school. So going back to school time was like harvesting my grandparents' huge gardens and doing canning and preserving. So
I Did you enjoy doing that?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. My grandma used to bug me because she would say it'd be like 2 peas into my mouth and then 3 peas into the bucket and 2 peas into my mouth.
I love an activity that involves a snack.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
That's how I live my life. I'm like, will there be snacks?
Yes.
So I love that. That's so unique.
It was wonderful. Like at the time, I definitely hated it because I didn't get to have it many friends. Now looking back, I'm like, oh, it was such a privilege. Such a privilege.
Yeah, I could see how it could feel a little lonely doing that, but also in retrospect, really loving that
Oh,
experience.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, speaking about experience, let's talk about your experience in pest control. How did you find yourself in this line of work?
Oh, well, like many people, I definitely did not think about it at all. I actually didn't know about it as a career path until I needed it in my life. So I was a building manager, a caretaker at a building, and I got bed bugs in my suite and I got cockroaches. So that was my first interaction with pest management. And it just so happened that the technician was a woman and we kind of struck up a friendship. And that was my intro into pest management. And years later, I saw where she was hiring or where she was working with hiring, and she put in a good word. And I thought it must pay more than the doggy daycare I was working at the time, and it did. It was a lot more money than I was used to making, so that was a huge bonus. But I just fell in love with it, and I loved it immediately, day one.
How how was experiencing pests in your own home, how did that translate to a love for the industry itself?
I think it gave me a different perspective in that I know what it was like to be on the other end of it. So I had an appreciation on both sides. So I appreciated once I learned more about pests. And then I also understood what it was like to be ignorant of the pests and how scary it is to go to Google when you find a bug and how you're just inundated with so much misinformation. And so just approaching uh, people in my career that way with understanding that they're not stupid. I know what it was like to just be like, oh my God, I found bed bugs. What do I do? And doing the absolute worst thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation there, and very often we talk on the podcast about that DIY
Mhm.
pest control experience and how actually that most likely is not how to handle the situation. Call the
Yeah.
professionals and let them help you because they understand the entire cycle. So, what was that time in your life working for this company, falling in love? I know that you take a lot of extra care with your customers and the people that you're interacting with. So when you were with this company, what was that like for you?
At first, my training was very much, it felt like they wanted us to be very cold with people, especially when you're going into apartments. The direction was like, don't leave any notes for people, don't communicate with them directly. Everything had to go through property management. And it was hard for me. Early on in my career, I had actually, and this was kind of like a turning point, and where I realized I was going to maybe do things a little bit differently than I was being trained to do. It was pretty early on in my career. My documentation had caused someone to get evicted from their apartment. And not my intention at all. I was just doing exactly what I was trained to do and just laying out the facts and not communicating with that person. And it was a single mom with two little girls, and I could still remember what their apartment looked like. And it just sort of haunted me because I myself had been a single mom living in an apartment, having very, it's precarious when you don't have a lot of money. So I can only imagine what happened to her when she got evicted, and how much that must have set her back in life. But that changed me to want to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that is a I don't want to put this on you, but like that guilt or
Mhm.
feeling responsible for someone in
Absolutely.
that way. And especially with your story and knowing where you're coming from, having that on you would definitely change how you operate. So what were the steps that you took after this experience? What were some of the changes that you took on yourself?
One of the things that was awesome that happened for me is that I was asked to move outside the city. So I was working when I first started in Winnipeg, which is our capital city of Manitoba. And then we had merged with another company, took on all of their clients, and they had the Crown Royal whiskey plant in Gimli. So I was asked to move kind of closer that way to be able to take care of that client and grow the brand out there. And the perk for me was that I got to kind of be in charge of my scheduling, got to be in charge of a lot of stuff because it was just difficult for the city to should navigate it all. So I started to experiment because nobody was checking up on me. So I started to, when property management would call in for buildings that I was handling, say, like, is it possible for the resident to be home when I come? Even if they're just home when I come to do the inspection, they don't necessarily have to be there for the treatment, but just so that I can touch base with them. The thing that I kept thinking is that a pest control treatment's not very, it wouldn't be very successful in a home if you never talk to the homeowner. So why do we go into apartments and almost never talk to these people? And we just rely on property management to be communicating, and knowing that probably sometimes when they are communicating with them, it's just a copy and paste from what I write. And maybe that is a little cold and they're not necessarily going to do what I ask them to do because sanitation is disgusting. Is not a nice thing to be told. Yeah.
Yeah. So this experience is having you do things a little bit differently. How did your experience then change? What was the experience like for the people you were dealing with as well?
I think they started to, over time, I started to get a little bit more comfortable and know what was actually necessary to request of people. Oftentimes we have these huge prep sheets that people get, and they can just be overwhelming. And, if you're a person that is maybe financially going through some hard times, and so you're stressed out, and then you're working a lot, and then you get bed bugs, and then you get this giant prep sheet, and you just sort of shut down. And so I just tried to gauge what was the most important thing for people to do, and then started to ask for just those things. And I was having the same level of success as when I was asking people to do this crazy long laundry list of things. So people appreciated that they weren't having to wash all of their laundry and move all of their stuff away from the walls. They were just really having to add a few tasks into their schedule for the week or 2 weeks or however long it took.
So we're asking our clients to have a few things to accomplish instead of this huge, long laundry list, and you're finding success with this. You're working with this company, and I believe you were working with them for about 8 years, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Amazing. So what was the light bulb that went off for you that said, "You know what? I can take this into my own hands."
It was a multitude of things, definitely. I mean, I had been with them for 8 years. I started when my youngest was almost 2, and I missed all of those summers. And I am a little bit of a workaholic, and I found it difficult to take time off in the summers because there was no one to take care of my customers. And so I just kept feeling like I couldn't take this time off. And my customers kept telling me, you work too hard to be working for someone else. You should really be investing in yourself. But really, because of my background and where I've come from and what I've been through, I think I just didn't feel like that was something that I could do, that someone like me can't become a business owner, that it wouldn't happen. I've had far too many times in my life that I've lost everything. And it was incredibly scary that now I've built myself up to this stability. And am I ready to leave a job that was paying me? I think I was making about 75K a year at the time, and it was very stable. And did I have what it took? And then wouldn't you know that a man pissed me off?
Surprising.
But you know what? Now looking back, I mean, personally, if he even hears this, like, thank you so much.
Oh,
Because if you had not, you know, I know he was going through stuff, but I definitely wouldn't have thought that it was possible. And it was just sort of that nudge that I needed to take my own life in my hands. So that was kind of what happened. It was, yeah.
yeah. What was it like when you made that decision and you were telling friends and family about starting your own business? What was the reactions there?
So the first people I told actually were my two internet friends in Ontario. So my friend Kaya and my friend Rachel, who both had their own pest control company. It was like I got mad at work and I just went to my keyboard and I was like, how do I even do this? And so they just sent me all of the information that I would need to do stuff, put me into contact with people. When I told my husband, he was like, yeah, that makes total sense. And some family members were like, are you sure? That's a really good job you're leaving. And for the most part, people that knew me and knew how much I loved my job were like, yeah, worst thing that happens is you go back to where you were working and they'll probably take you back. And I'm sure they would, but so far it's working. So
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. So, Valkyrie Pest Solutions. First and foremost, I need to know how you came up with this name because it's fantastic. I love it.
thank you. So when I first started my business, my intention was really to just be me doing it. I just wanted it to really kind of exemplify a female run business. And a Valkyrie is something from Norse mythology. It's a kind of like a mythical being that was sent down after a battle to decide which of the slain were worthy to go to Valhalla. So Valkyrie literally means chooser of the slain. And we sure do a heck of a lot of slaying in pest control. So I thought it was great. But it's also sort of like a little nod to where I do live. So Gimli is known as Little Iceland. There's a huge Icelandic population here. So all things Viking is very popular around here. So when I say the name around here, people know what it is. But yeah.
I love that it reflects the location as well as your mission for the business. It's really just kind of combining these two things. Tell me about that first year. What was that first year for you? I know that there's always so many ups and downs, and you were talking about taking these risks and what an incredible risk to take. What are some of the lessons that you learned from your first year?
Well, it was the scariest and most amazing year of my life. Definitely. I pulled the plug and put in my 2 weeks kind of end of April. So I didn't have to exist a whole year, but Manitoba gets cold in the winter. So the idea of winter was terrifying for me. And I have been the primary breadwinner of my family since I started in pest control because it was a good job. So I actually worked a whole other job. I would do pest control during the day, and then I would clean schools at night. And I wish I would have just trusted in myself and the quality of my work and how fast I would go because I didn't really need that job. And it actually set me so far behind because instead of working on my business in the evenings, I was cleaning a school and I was sending invoices when I was on my break, cleaning the schools and, not getting to see my kids anymore. So that was the biggest lesson was just realizing that you need to give your all. If you're gonna jump into entrepreneurial, you need to give it everything you have. But I also acknowledge that I'm super privileged in that my husband and I owned our house. And even though I took out all the equity in my house and went further into debt, there's a lot of people that don't have that opportunity to start a business. So that was sort of another lesson that I learned is that as I grow my business and become more successful, that I want to create a kind of community of mentorship, but then also opportunity for people, especially members of minorities, that can have a chance, even if it's five or $10,000 that I could give to someone who maybe doesn't have equity to pull out so that they can take that chance because it's for people like us that don't have a lot of money. When you start a business, failure is not an option. It was not an option because I would have lost everything.
Yeah, it's an incredible risk. It sounds to me like you really learned in that first year how to trust yourself
Mm,
and to know that you are capable of doing this job and owning this business. But what a scary like what a scary time in someone's life. I hear these stories from owners and I always ask that question of that first year. What is that like? Especially with a seasonal business is very difficult.
yes,
So I always think it is just incredibly brave to start out and really stumble through that first year of figuring out how you want it to be and what your goals are, setting those. And it sounds like really taking the time and trusting yourself is a huge lesson that you had taken with you that first year.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to backtrack a minute because you did mention about mentors, and I'd love to hear about your mentors. I know that you're someone who is really invested in your community and that you have conversations with all these different pest control owners, including some that have already been on the show. And I know you have created a great network of people. Can you tell me a little bit more about your mentors?
The very first mentor that I had in this industry was a woman, Kathy Cano, who was our entomologist. And she just took me under her wing. And we were both bug nerds. I mean, she's an entomologist. So. But she was the first one. And I remember when I told her that I was going to start my business, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, you're going to be great." And that was like, okay, I'm going to be okay. Then also, my friend Kaya and Rachel were just absolutely. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them, and I'd never met them in person when they were doing this for me either. But I definitely have to shout out the NPNA. I applied for the ELP program, like the executive leadership program, in October of 2022, and I got accepted into it, which I didn't think I would because I was a brand new business, super small. I didn't think that I would get it at all. And through that program, I was paired with an industry mentor. So I had Audrey Hall from EcoServe Pest in New York, who has really helped me with so much, both personally and professionally. But then also my classmates, as soon as they saw that I should be adding another person, they were like, "You need to hire someone." And I'm like, "I don't know." And they're like, "No, you got to do it now or it's not going to happen." And through ELP, I met amazing people like Noelle and Ryan who have just filled my life with so much joy and wonder. And I can't imagine my life without them now, even though I've known them for such a short amount of time. Truly and honestly love them to pieces. Through them, met another network of people. So I'm big on the fact that people, uplifting people, it can change the world, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like a totally different person.
Yeah, absolutely. Having people believe in your work, believe in you, and are one step outside of the business to be able to really tell you what's going on and see it for what it is instead of when you're in your business, sometimes it's hard to pull out and see the bigger picture. And it's so incredible that you have a network of people who can look at the bigger picture and help guide you and keep your momentum going.
Well, and we all learn from each other's mistakes. And the thing that I think is absolutely wonderful, especially the group that I'm in with Noelle and Ryan, is that it doesn't really matter where you are in your business or what role you are in whatever company you work at. Every single person has something that they're just amazing at, that other people can learn from. And the way that I run my company with the trauma informed lens is something that I thought nobody would care about at all. And I just kept telling people, and they were like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And I never thought that anyone would care. So, had I not started telling these people in my network and then having them say, "No, this is really important. You really need to tell more people about this," I would have just kept it to myself and not put that out at all. So, it's so, so necessary to have kind of that cheerleader group, and your friends can absolutely make you or break you.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I want to talk about this trauma informed lens. This is something that you're really passionate about and seem to focus all of your energy through that lens. Can you explain to me why you function your business this way and also what it means for those who aren't aware?
So just kind of a super brief definition on it. Viewing people through a trauma-informed lens is viewing them as the person. So you're not looking at their behaviors, you're not looking at the way that they live. You're really just meeting them where they are at and treating them with respect. So you're just trying to make every interaction with them as safe as possible, safe feeling for them, safe feeling for you, and it just helps to get some cooperation going where you might necessarily not, and it gives you a greater understanding, and it helps them to trust you. So it's for me incredibly important because of my past. I am a survivor of domestic violence and didn't really know how that impacted me and how it really changed the way that I moved through life. And it was all because of the trauma that I'd gone through, that it colored the way I talked to people. It colored the way I took criticism from people. It, destroyed my confidence and made it impossible for me to kind of move out of that rut I was in, and it made me kind of fall into depression. We dabble in drug use and alcohol abuse and just feeling hopeless. And so I always remember how low I would feel. And so when I see people when they're low and I know where I'm at now, I just see the possibility in the person and not what they are right now. I know that there's more to them. There's more that they could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes under the umbrella of we don't know everyone's story, and we don't know what they're
Absolutely.
going through today, let alone what they've gone through in their life. So it sounds like you're really taking an approach that allows for a good conversation and for positive results to occur.
Absolutely.
So, working through this trauma-informed lens, you've done the no prep method, which is a very short list as opposed to the laundry list of things that people need to prepare before you enter into the home. So, what is so beneficial to that? And also, how effective is it?
The benefit of that process is that when I come to someone's apartment, it looks exactly like how it normally looks, which I want. I always tell people that I treat bedbugs and cockroaches kind of like a crime scene. I need to know how this person lives, what's their level of sanitation, what do they think that they could possibly take on as another thing? You know, if I come in and there is huge piles of dishes and there's huge piles of laundry, probably asking them to deal with both of those things, it's not going to happen. So if it's cockroaches, I'm going to ask them to get rid of the dishes. If it's bedbugs, I'm going to ask them to tackle the laundry and just try and meet people kind of where they're at with the abilities that they're at, and understanding that financially it can be a little bit of a difficulty. I've actually even worked with property management companies and said, especially in the instance of cockroaches, hey, how about you skip the treatment with us next time and you pay for this person to have someone come in and help them clean, because that's going to really help a lot more than you pay me to go back in 2 weeks and just do this again. You know, it's the same amount of money, just put it where it needs to be. And this person is just struggling and it's pest control. It's still pest control, right? So,
I love that. You're really taking care of the situation in a holistic way as opposed to I come in, I throw down some bait, I come in and I spray here and I leave. And then I'll come back in a few weeks and start the process all over again. Sometimes you have to really diagnose the problem itself and then treat around that. And I love that you're taking the time to actually get to know these people as well, as opposed to not having them there. You're learning a lot.
well, and I can often talk with them. So I do
Mm.
find education is such a big thing. I mean, education is huge in this industry. A lot of the times people in this industry don't take the time to talk to people in apartments. They just assume they're not going to listen. It doesn't matter. And my view on that is, even if I tell them and they don't listen, at least I told them that's my job. And I need to respect this person, that they have the capacity to understand what I'm saying and to care about what I'm saying. I think it shows a lack of respect if you don't you don't even bother. You know, it to me, it just feels disrespectful that you just immediately think this person is dirty, they're not going to care. So why are they going to care? Because they can feel that. Why not just make this one little change? And it does make a huge world of difference. And I have such an amazing success rate with it. And not only do I have a success rate with it, but property management companies routinely call us and say how amazing it is to have residents call them and say, thank you so much for sending this pest control company, because they were so amazing and they cared and they showed compassion. And I don't have bedbugs anymore. I don't have cockroaches anymore. And I didn't have to, move all of my furniture and take everything out of the kitchen. But it can be simple. I
Yeah.
have to say, I'm in Canada. We don't have the same kind of pesticide resistance in cockroaches. So please don't think I'm shaming people down there. It's different.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
No one is taking offense in the least. In the least. We were talking about your mentors, and you had brought up one of your mentors saying, now is the time to bring someone on. This is the time to do it. What was that experience like bringing on your first employee? And I also know that you have a very specific mission within Valkyrie, but first, I'd love to hear what that experience was and then also your mission.
I knew immediately that I wanted this person as soon as I decided that I wanted to have technicians. And it was actually my best friend from high school. And she was working as an accountant at the time. So just totally out
Come
of
kill
left
bugs with
field.
me.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. She laughs because she said usually when people from high school slide into your DMs, it's multi-level marketing, but you were like, come on, let's go kill bugs together. And so I took her on a ride along to show roaches because she was not sure about insects. And she was like, yeah, you know what? I'm ready for a change. I don't like working in an office. And I just brought her on. We worked side by side for a really long time. So I am big on training. I think that this industry should be set up more like an apprenticeship because it really is a trade that you learn over time. I didn't feel very comfortable, like completely comfortable till I was in my fifth year.
Oh,
So,
wow.
which
Yeah.
I mean, the way I was trained, you had 2 weeks riding along with someone, they throw you your truck keys, and there you go. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What is your training process like? How is it different from the company that you worked for previously other than the 2 weeks?
Well, I do one-on-one. So with when Stevie came on, we worked one-on-one completely for about the first 3 months. And then I started to sort of give her things that I could tell that she was proficient in. So she got really, really good at doing bed bugs and cockroaches. So now she is the bed bugs and cockroaches in the city person. And then anytime we had something like rodents, where it's, that is something that does take a little bit of practice to really narrow down all of the entry points and stuff and to start to think like a mouse. Then I started to slowly kind of separate. That happened probably February or so, but for the most part, we were working together as much as possible. And still, when it's stuff she's not comfortable with, then
Yeah.
when I can, yeah.
How does it feel to hand over the keys a little bit to someone that you know and that you trust and that you've trained? But I know that it was you going out into the fields every day. How does it feel handing over those keys a little bit?
It was definitely scary, but I picked Stevie because of her personality. Because her and I don't say we're like yin and yang. Like, she's super bubbly, but takes no shit. And I'm I'm a little bit too nice, but can be intimidating looking. So I look meaner than I am, and she looks sweeter than she is. But she has a heart of gold, as much as I do. She has work experience in a field previous to when she was in accounting that I thought would kind of go hand in hand with this one. She did a lot of work having to be compassionate with people that it's difficult to be compassionate with. So
It's a
it's
good positive learning transfer,
yes,
if you will.
yes, yeah. No, she was immediately started talking to customers the exact same way that I was talking to customers, and I was like, okay, that's good. I'm
Yeah, it
good.
seems like you are very compatible. What is the mission of Valkyrie when it comes to hiring? I know that you have a very specific mission for the industry itself, really.
Absolutely. So when I did finally decide that I wanted to grow, I figured I should do it with some purpose. Because when you do things with a purpose, just like how I started the company with a purpose, it goes so much better. My purpose is to attract more gender diversity within this industry. So obviously attracting more women, but also more gender diverse people that are, trans and non-binary, and to offer them kind of first dibs at full time. I mean, I will absolutely hire men, but full-time technicians will be women, trans, or non-binary folk.
I love this mission. I know that only 6% of the technicians out there are women and 0% as trans and non-binary, and you're really putting in this work. Why is it so important to you? How did you come to this realization other than just being a woman in the industry?
So I was like, where I got hired had a really high percentage of women. There was about 6 technicians out of 20 some odd technicians. So that's high for in the industry. And usually you see kind of like one woman here, one woman there. So what I started to see over time, though, was that it didn't really seem to matter that there were a lot of women. The culture was still very old boys club.
Mm.
So the women technicians, maybe they didn't get to go to certain jobs because it was unsafe, and it wasn't put to the women to make that decision. It was made by someone else, which to me felt very paternalistic, and I can make that decision for myself kind of thing, I'm a lot bigger than a lot of the men that worked at work, so it was just silly to me.
Yeah. I hear that. I hear that.
But I realized then it's the culture. And I use my background in previous to getting into pest control. I was actually in university to become a teacher. So I majored in English, minored in psychology, which is why I'm very big into the brain stuff with trauma. But I was picking my courses, and I had got put at the very bottom. So the last of the stuff that was left was a gender studies course. And at this time, oh gosh, this was back in like 2010 or something. I did not consider myself a feminist at all, at all. And I was so mad that I had to take this gender studies course. I remember posting on Facebook about it, like, oh my God, I got to pretend to be a feminist now. Like, ah. So I went into this course completely closed minded. And then they just start to show you the way that women are thought of differently in society. I never thought about the fact that, when I was 14 or 15 and getting attention from older men, to me, I felt like that was on me. That was my fault. I brought that on myself. And now it's like, no, those for grown men. And I was 14 and 15. And that is on them. That is not like I looked like a 14-year-old. I didn't look like a 20-year-old. So it's just realizing all of those things that kind of play against you, the way that we feel shame, the way that we are pitted against each other. I always explain it like, especially at the place I worked, the culture was male, so they did have diversity, but there was like one chair at the table for a woman. So when there's 6 women vying for the chair, you're not doing sister solidarity, you're going for that chair. And that's the way that the culture works. And so that was the motivation for me, was to just eliminate that. Let's just get rid of the chairs entirely.
I love that. I love that. That that's incredible to have that eye-opening experience and realizing that these systems that are put in place don't benefit anyone, women or men, truly.
Oh no.
And yeah, and being able to dismantle that in any way that you can and build something from that is really commendable.
Well, and a big part of our company culture is not working evenings and weekends. That was a big thing where I worked. Is it was looked down on if you turned down work because of your kids, and that was whether you were a man or a woman. If you were calling in sick because of your kids, like, well, you're unreliable. Well, it's just life. Kids get sick. It's not a big deal. So a big thing for us is just trying to make our company as friendly as possible for every single lifestyle. If you want to work evenings and weekends, you absolutely can, but that is not the norm, and that is not what we are going to ask of you. We don't require it.
What else about your company culture do you pride yourself on?
I do a very interesting thing, and probably as I grow, this may not. We'll see how it goes. But I actually do. I actually do not do an 8-hour day, so I don't require that either myself or my employee has to do like 8 to 4 or 8 to 5 or whatever. We all have roles and responsibilities, and we need to meet them and sometimes exceed them, and that's all I ask. So it has worked very well. I don't have, Stevie's not calling in sick when she's not sick. She's calling in sick when she's sick, and she's working when she can, just like I am. Because I always think I know when I'm having a bad day, and when you're having a really bad day, you shouldn't be doing something where you're interacting with the public. So if I can recognize that about myself, I have to trust that my employees are able to recognize that in themselves. And if they can't come to work, it's something, whether it's mental or physical, then they should absolutely take that day off. There's rules in place. Obviously, they need to reschedule their appointments, but that's how it goes.
I love this, and you said trust, the word trust, and that's really what it's boiling down to. Throughout this entire conversation, we're talking about respect and trust throughout every question, it feels like, and
Yes,
it's so true. The people that you hire, giving them that trust and that flexibility is only going to benefit you in the end, and them.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And why are you hiring people that you don't trust?
Very true. Also something to think about.
Yeah.
Yes. So you decide you're interested in getting into pest control. What would your advice be to that Suzy?
The thing is, like, I wouldn't change anything. That's the hard part, you know?
I think that's a beautiful answer. I think that's a beautiful answer. You don't wanna give her too much. You don't wanna give her too
No.
much. You don't want her to change her mind. You don't
But
wanna
that's
affect the future. That's
but that's
that's the law
even
of it all.
even with my life, all of the stuff I've been through, all of the awful, I wouldn't have a lot of the good. You know, if I hadn't have met my boyfriend when I was 15, I wouldn't have my son. If I hadn't had my son, you know, I probably wouldn't have gone back to high school and finished my grade 12. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have left his father finally. And it's just, I can't I can't change anything. I am who I am because of it. It sucks that some of the stuff happened, but I can use my experiences to help other people get out of those rough spots and be the best versions of themselves that they can be.
Susie, that is beautiful. That truly is. That's truly beautiful, and it is just so informative of who you are as a person. And thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing your story with us. And Valkyrie, we're so excited to hear how it's going for you. So you're going to have to come back on,
Oh,
give us an
absolutely.
update, hear about it, and congratulations again. Thank you so much for coming onto the
Oh, thank you
podcast.
so much for having me.
Of course.